I know.
When Bernie was mayor, we worked on land trusts, and we certainly worked on collaborations with different organizations. So I am very interested in this panel, and I'm very excited to introduce Grace Dyrness, Jeff Green, and Maribel Nunez.
Okay. All right. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Hi, everyone. Maribel, glad to be here. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Betty, for inviting us here. Maribel Nunez with Inland Equity Community Land Trust, Executive Director. Our organization was formerly known as California Partnership. We started as an anti-poverty organization in 2003 and became Inland Equity Community Land Trust in 2020. So we're fairly new in the Community Land Trust. And we're excited to be here. Are we just doing quick introductions, or do we?
Just go ahead.
And so, yeah, thank you so much. We're here excited to share how we are able to form our Community Land Trust, some the good and the bad, the ugly, I guess, in some ways, on how we did this work. And we, I wanted to really, as a Community Land Trust, I wanted to also give a shout out to Matthew Snyder. He's in our board. And through Occupy, we know each other, Occupy Riverside. And so Matt, actually it was his idea about, this idea that came up about Community Land Trust. And glad to see Senator Bernie Sanders here today, is where the motivation came from Burlington Community Land Trust. And so then we didn't know. We were all about, Medicare for all, and we definitely saw this as an opportunity about decommodifying housing. And through that model, or that, that story or example, we got more informed and we had a lot of our issues, because we were about anti-poverty, social justice issues, and housing kept coming up. And so we had learned through that Community Land Trust in Vermont, that's where the inspiration came here in the Inland Empire. And we're based in the Inland Empire in south of Los Angeles, for the folks that are not here, San Bernardino, Riverside County. And so here we are. So I wanted to share that because it takes a movement, especially when you look at the Inland Empire. We have come a long way over the 10 plus years to get more progressive electeds elected with our efforts on redistricting. We have a lot of new leadership in federal, state, and local level. And so it takes a movement to change that political landscape. And through community organizing and getting within the faith-based, community, we have continued to work not only through the Community Land Trust, but looking at and serving the community on tenants' rights. So we do have an Inland Empire Tenants Union, so community organizing and also policy advocacy work that we do. And we're also part of the California Community Land Trust Network to make sure at the state level we could really create policies and set up an infrastructure and systems to make California a friendly place for community land trust. And so we have a beautiful board that comes from all different walks of life, also tenants that are part of our board to really help us build this community land trust here in the Inland Empire. And where we have a lot of our resident, and where we stem a lot of our movement and resident-based building is through different faith communities, the Universal Unitarian Church of Riverside, Ecclesia Church is where we have our San Bernardino tenants meetings, Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, really a broad base of coalition folks. And one of our initial board members, Beverly Earl, rest in peace, she came from Catholic Charities. She said, we need to start building houses for poor people. And so through faith communities is what also led for our movement here in the Inland Empire to create this community land trust. And basically looking at ways through different partnerships to be able to move a little bit more the needle on community land trust. And so with our nonprofit, we did have a lot of, through collaboration, we did have someone just message us on Facebook that they have 20 acres of property up in Adelanto, which is the unincorporated part of San Bernardino County, where they believe in the community land trust model. That they just Facebook messages on our page saying that her brother passed away and that they would like to work with us and see if they can give us a discount for the property. And so it was 20 acres. We were for $100,000, not bad, but very rural area. In that community is really where you have detention centers, where you don't have a lot of economic development and housing opportunities. And so we were able to get because we're new in this housing production world. So the only way was through some of our connections. We got a broker loan, high interest rates, but at least they let us hold the land under our name in the meantime. And then just continue working with the community and broadening that coalition. We had a lot of people in the high desert that were great allies that we work with. And they were very politically engaged, that they leveraged allies in the assembly side. And we also knew some people that work, and we won't mention who, but that knew about state budget as proposals. So knowing how it's done through our insider staffers that work for Senator's office, and the changing of the high desert political landscape with Assemblymember Juan Carillo, we were able to put a state budget as proposal, and we got about $1 million in our ask, and our goal was 1.5, and we ended up getting a nonprofit, I guess, lender, Lendonate, that helped us with the remainder of the gap funding. And so we are able, and I know Jeff will share a little bit more about, just a little bit more about the weeds of that work, and how we are going into the building up the units within our community land trust model. But we're really excited about that. And I did want to, share, because I do have some folks here that we know through the different CLTs here in California. I really recommend that you have a strong, partner that does community engagement if your organization doesn't do that. But I think it's also important if either yourself has a 501c4 or that you partner with a 501c4, because you're going to need to have a strong voter engagement program to get those local state allies, because you're going to need local allies, right, for property, public land, and zoning, right? You're going to need some, the state and federal for capital, right? So you do need to be part of C4s to make sure you have champions, to have the champions back, or that you get new ones in, right, to be able to sustain this work. And so I'll leave it like that. One thing I did want to mention before I wrap up, and we'll share more during the event, or do the event here, is we have a fundraiser that's coming up on April 20th on Saturday. We're going to be doing the tour of the property. If you're more welcome to join us in Adelanto, and then we're going to have Assemblymember Juan Carillo join us in the evening to just give thanks and celebrate, and a little bit of dancing and music we're going to have on April 20th, and hopefully you can join us. So thank you so much, and I'll pass it to you.
Okay, I'm trying to push forward on the slides. All right. Oh,
Is that it? Is that the first one?
That's not the first slide.
So go backwards.
Oh.
You're going
Okay,
forward.
There you
there's
go.
the first slide. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to, I wanted to start with this just because of the history. This is the Board of New Communities Community Land Trust, which was an agricultural community land trust started, and I'm guessing somebody's already talked about this. But, we wanted to talk a little bit about the faith community, and on that board is Father McKnight from St. Louis, and Faye Bennett, who Faye Bennett raised funds and bought people's debt in the South, and got a lot of people out of sharecropper debt. And so these are the people that inspired us, along with Senator Sanders, and I'm a little bit starstruck, but I am So I wanted to introduce, a little bit about this board and the civil rights fighters that are on that board. Slater King, the whole crew there. I want to honor those people, and then I want to honor our board. This is our board, which a lot of overlap. So you have our board president, and Annabelle Navarez. She's was past co-chair of DSA and the IE. We have Maribel Nunez, who's a rock star, and then Matt there. He's Matt. Don't worry about him. No, he's a professor at UCR who's really championed this idea and got us together in a book group to read about the idea and transitioned us from organization that did advocacy for health and human services into an organization that's going to be housing developers. And so okay, I'm trying to go forward now. Is somebody else controlling this next slide? Okay, there we go. So this is the property, or a little outline of where the property is and the aspiration of what we wanted to do. So we have a board member named Gerald Katz who did Eco Acre. He built his house. It's in the city of Paris, and it cost him $89,000. He did the labor himself, and he built it out of rammed earth. It was completely, it used solar panels. It used a well. It has, so it's totally off the grid in the city of Paris. And his whole project cost him $89,000. And we were like, here's a rammed earth project where the vast majority of the materials to make the house came from the land itself. And that's the dream we had. We wanted to do that. And so we bought the land. We, there's a thing called the SB9 lot split. It's 20 acres. And the way it's zoned, agricultural, residential, you can put a house on it and 3 ADUs. And so 20 acres, 4 houses, not a lot of density there. Okay, we could do SB9 and do a lot split, and we can get, the 4 houses, 1 house and 3 ADUs, and then 1 house and 3 ADUs. Now we got 8 houses. Now we're learning that we can do an SB9 lot split again on both of those parcels, because you can have 1 house per 5 acres as it's zoned. So ultimately, going down the road doing these lot splits, we're hoping to get 16 units. But the first 4, this is the first time our board has ever made houses. And so we work with an organization called NPHS, which is Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services. They're a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution. And they had just put in these manufactured homes, these modulars in San Bernardino City. And the project budget, the whole, because of the permitting and everything is all done by the manufacturer, and so all we have to do is prepare the pads and the rough plumbing and rough electrical, and then they deliver the houses, attach them to the foundation. We do the paperwork, and it converts them to real property, and now you have a house that you can sell. And so each house is going to come in at between $250,000 and $260,000. They have all of your appliances, a dishwasher, and a kitchen. They're 1,085 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. And we're doing all 4 of them like that. Okay, well, I'm just getting ahead of myself. This is the property. It's a beautiful view. That's Mount Baldy on the back there. And this is, your schematics, and it's all very beautiful. That is the plan. So here is the proposal. What we want to do is the people that are going to live in the house are income qualified. They're coming out of the Housing Authority of San Bernardino County, and they're going through a homeownership preparation program, and they've all been people who successfully graduated out of Section 8 and are saving up money to buy a house, and they will be offered the Community Land Trust house. What we want to do with that is these at market, buying a house in Adelanto right now is approximately $400,000. And we want to sell them at cost and take that difference. So it'll be about 250 to 260, the final build-out cost, and the difference between the 400,000 and the 250,000 we'll hold as an equity share, and then they'll get a loan for the 250,000, buy the house and pay down that loan, build up the equity that they pay in on that loan. They'll, whatever they put in as a down payment. When they sell the house, they collect that equity that they built up. Any market value, if it goes up in value, they'll take a share of that as well. And we'll hold on to the initial equity share. And then the next person that buys it will come in and have that same equity share going forward, and that'll maintain it below market rate in perpetuity as long as it stays, within the community land trust structure. That is generally the plan. We should have the houses completed in June, and so we are very excited. We've been working, started as a nonprofit in 2020. And so for us, this is very fast. I know a lot of you guys are probably faster on some other things, but it's been a lot of work for us. We've got a staff of 4 people, and we do other things, like she mentioned, the tenants union, and that work too as well isn't very important, just to build the base and the community buy-in to make sure that people are willing to have poor people live near them, because I think that's one of the key barriers to housing. You have organizations that are fairly well funded, but they can't get anything done because nobody wants poor people living anywhere near them. They're all following the Orange County model, and you just move all the poor people east, and Riverside, San Bernardino County really, we can't successfully move all of our poor people to Arizona, so we're going to have to build houses for them. And so
I want
I
to
think.
mention from the land and then the tenants, the residents are going to be in our board.
So, part of it's 20 acres. It's zoned agricultural, so we're partnering with a tech startup, I guess you want to call it. They do vertical farming, and it's called From the Land. They do basically wad dottle 8-foot by 8-foot structures so that they don't need to be permitted, and they grow vertically, various things, and they put in below ground PVC piping to maintain cool air, and then you use solar panels to run fans to keep the temperature inside at a regulated temperature, and then they use ambient light from skylights in a house and other lighting to grow food, and they can grow a lot more food per acre. And then wait, I have another presenter, and
Oh, no, that's okay. Go ahead. No.
so our hope is that From the Land will, they're kind of high-tech, low-tech, the vertical farm, and then just using a chip, they can regulate the temperature inside this thing. They're growing beetles to feed out like chickens to create protein. And it's the scientist at UCR is the owner of the startup, and they've developed this model, and you invest about $30,000. You can create a job that, somebody tending that can, sell chicken, eggs, and whatever else for, as long as it's there. So it's an excellent project as well that'll go.
And then the residents that live there, they're going to be in our board. And I know we're going to pass it to, and then pass it to you.
Well, thank you. So I, too, am involved in community land trusts. I taught at USC for several years and worked at the Center for Religion and Civic Culture there, looking at the role of religion in the city of Los Angeles, primarily in Southern California. And then decided I'm done with grading and so on and so forth, and I retired in 2018. So the last 2 years, I've been very involved in the San Gabriel Valley Community Land Trust. So I taught a lot on land justice issues when I was at the School of Public Policy. And now was my chance to actually get my hands in the dirt and actually work. And it's a lot of work. Maybe I should go back to teaching. It's very much a lot of work to get what they are doing. So we in the San Gabriel Valley, it's a regional land trust because we have 32 cities within the San Gabriel Valley. And so we thought it's much more expedient to have one umbrella community land trust rather than multiple little places. But each one of those can start their own, and we can do at a higher level the technical stuff and the other ways that we can support. So we're just launching, and we have no property yet, so like I'm learning from these folks of how to get going. And but one of the things that we found in common was that the faith community needs to get involved. That faith communities are amazing, and that's what I wanted to talk about. We know for a fact that faith communities are always, having services for people in the community. They're giving food pantries and have thrift stores and doing all kinds of medical support and so on and so forth. But we don't hear so much about how they're involved in housing. And of course, community land trusts way back with the days of Bernie Sanders, of course, but even before that, with Millard Fuller in Georgia and Habitat for Humanity was born out of faith communities. And they were actually born out of African American churches that were there that began working on housing. And so there's been a long tradition of that, and we don't hear about it much. But I'm going to talk about why it's important to engage the faith community and use as an example from my research and stuff here in Los Angeles area. So in the 90s, more or less, early 90s, after the Rodney King riots that happened or uprisings that happened, we saw major churches come to the fore and start looking at their community in a more serious way. So, for example, the first African Methodist Episcopal Church, which is known as FAME, the minister there was Cecil Murray, and we call him Chip Murray, a wonderful person. But this church, which is many thousands of people in the church, began thinking more seriously of their work within the community. And so they decided that they started what's called Fame Renaissance, which would become the arm next to the church so that the church can continue doing its work as church, and the Community Development Corporation could do its thing as a community development corporation, but the church still had oversight. And excuse me, so the Fame Renaissance began by building senior housing, and they now have housing all over. Followed around the same time, actually, West Angeles CDC, Community Development Corporation, was born out of the Church of God in Christ on Crenshaw Boulevard, which is another major church. It was founded and run the pastor was Charles E. Blake Sr., his son is now the pastor. But they too decided they were going to start a CDC and begin working on housing as well. And so here you see some of the pictures of them. So these are big churches that have expansive work in housing of all sorts, and several others too. I can go on, Crenshaw and several others, Faithful Central, big churches. It's a wonderful way in which they have rallied to provide something that was being left out of their community because of redlining and other things, where housing was just not available, and primarily seniors really suffering on the streets. And so we have a lot to be grateful for these kind of churches. in the Episcopal diocese, very much more recently, are now starting to pick up and saying, okay, as diocese-wide, not one congregation, but a series of congregations, the bishop has said, we're going to put 25% of our church land and make it available for housing. And so that was a couple of years ago only. Already they have their first in Riverside. I think it's 69 units I put up there. Is it 69? I forget. Anyway, St. Michael's is a church, and they are the ones that have built this congregation. So the priest has been very involved in that. These are all examples from the Christian tradition, but the other traditions are also quite involved. And here you have the Islamic tradition has been building houses in other countries for quite a while, and we never even think about that. But their philosophy has been very much in tune with looking for the way the cultural and architectural issues in the Arab countries come together to meet the needs of the people. And the thing is, it's based on traditional Islamic planning and environmental principles, which the architects have taken from the Quran. It's very interesting, and if you're really interested, I can give you some papers you can look at. So these are examples in Lahore, Pakistan. But what about right here? We haven't seen a lot, and yet it's coming. And Islah Housing, this comes out of the Masjid Isbadallah in Los Angeles. It is founded by actually American Muslims, and they are now providing these quality transitional housing for people because we're just in dire need. And so we see also it's coming out of their own motivation religiously. The Buddhists have another perspective. They're mostly a very individually oriented religion, and so it's not generally that they'll do things in the community per se. But actually, San Jose Buddhist Church in San Jose, California has been building. And I could not, sorry, because I could not download any of their pictures for some reason, so I couldn't put that in. But here in LA, there's a Catholic and Buddhist coalition that's forming to build housing that's green. And so you see how, this is motivated out of, and I'll show you the different traditions in a minute. This one is the Jewish community has long been involved in providing housing. The Menorah Housing Foundation was started in 1969, and in the early 70s, they already had built big complexes, primarily started for seniors. Now it's low income. They have some in Santa Monica and also in Los Angeles. So we see how all of these traditions have been at work in reaching out beyond just providing services, in reaching out to provide safety and security. But why is it that I forgot. This is an important thing as well, because in Pasadena and other places, small congregations just cannot do what First AME does or what West Angeles Church of God in Christ does. Those have big groups of people with a lot of experience and expertise within it. These small churches cannot do that. And so what the Making Housing and Community Happen, which is a nonprofit organization in Pasadena, it organized a coalition. And what they have done is they have gone out and said, they found this lot, and you can see that, is the lot there in the middle? Yeah. It's an empty lot right at a very vital corner in Pasadena on Orange Grove and Fair Oaks. And the city was planning to build more condos, which they call affordable, but they're affordable for who? And, I can't afford them. That's how expensive and Pasadena has gone crazy building these kind of condos. And so Making Housing and Community Happen said, we got to organize. They have got to, at that point, they had so many people in the city who were homeless on the streets who were seniors. And I think at the time there were like 127 seniors on the street. And they said, this is unacceptable, and they started mobilizing. So they formed this coalition of churches, and mostly in the northwest area of Pasadena, which is the low-income area, mostly small African-American churches, but people from the mosque and people from the temple also joined in. And they did things like vigils, and in fact, the one picture where they're holding a space by a fence, that group of people actually slept on the property for several nights to draw attention, visible attention to them, and to say, we cannot allow the city to build something else that is not for the people of the city that we're looking for. And of course, the people got involved in all kinds of writing letters and going to the council meetings, and they were there time and time again. Well, so here's some of there's the people, the people out in front of the lot that they're sleeping there. And they also, in the council rooms and so on, very strong, constant at the council. You know, bringing the council members. They take the council members on bus rides through the city. They do all kinds of things to show them, this is the reality. You are looking at some other part. This is now planning at the grassroots, not planning in the Planning Commission office. And getting those planners to come and be on the meeting with the grassroots people. It was a very effective strategy, and here's what they built. Heritage Square South, some of that is the drawings, but it actually looks like that. It's brand new. They just started moving in people this month. And so this is what people from the faith community can do by coming together. If they don't have the big numbers, they form big numbers through the coalitions that they build. So I want to leave you with 5 reasons why I think in any of the work you do, I'm a participatory action researcher, so in any work, the grassroots, the people are the key. Who are you planning for? Who are you working for? It's the people. So I leave you with 5 reasons why these people should be part of that picture as well, the faith community. The first one is because they are motivated by their sacred texts, by what's in their own moral and religious tradition. And for example, in the Jewish tradition, there are multiple passages in the Torah that make it clear about redistributing wealth. There's there's things about the poor have human rights and condemns leaders who make iniquitous decrees, who write oppressive statutes to turn aside the needy from justice and to rob the poor people of their right, and encouraging people to bring the homeless. These are just some. The Abrahamic faiths, which by the way is Christian, Jewish, and Muslim, all have this same tradition. The Muslim tradition, it sees the house as the basis for society. And so the basic right of the Son of Man is 3 things: a house to live in, a piece of cloth to cover his body, and a loaf of bread and water. And they see the homes as a place of rest. It's important. How can you be on the streets and have this kind of place of rest? Impossible. So that's part of the motivation that comes from the Muslim tradition. From the Christian tradition, there's all kinds. Also, what is God's vision for housing? It calls us to house those around us And then further it says they shall sit under their own vines and under their own fig trees. In other words, it's got to be theirs. They've got to own it and be a part of this. That's why I love community land trusts, because everybody owns. Everybody can be a part of that. And beyond a simple right to housing, the book of Isaiah even speaks against displacement. And so you can use these scriptural texts to tell people from those traditions, look, come and join us, because this is what your own scriptures say, your own sacred texts say. Buddhist tradition view it, the real source of happiness is peace. And so you can take that and say, how can you be at peace when you're on the streets? How can you be at peace when you're in a situation where you might be evicted at any moment, or your rent might be raised and you will get traumatized with your kids? So that's number one reason. There's a real moral and ethical basis for that. Secondly, they exist within the communities already. You don't have to invent a community. There's communities of faith in almost every single neighborhood, probably multiple. And so they understand what is happening on the ground. What are the things that are affecting them, and what do they need? So it's important to have these people at your door. Thirdly, they have land. You know, most of the churches have extra land that they can build on. And in fact, in a recent study, California has 39,000 acres of land on different religious places that can be developed. And the good thing, organizing. California has recognized that and eased the possibility of building affordable housing by passing SB 4, which is the Affordable Housing on Faith's Land Act, which is a big victory for people who are finding it difficult to they want to build on their congregational land, but the zoning has prohibited. Now this Faith Lands Act really eases a lot of those, and I won't get into details of that. You can look it up and read what SB 4 is all about. Number 4, they provide a host of volunteers. You need a lot of people to come to city council. You need a lot of people to have marches on the street in front of that property. You need a lot of people to come and write letters and so on. So not only is it a host of volunteers, but there's a host of talents and professional experience within these congregations. And let's just harness that. Most of it they will do with volunteer time and provide the expertise that is needed. And then finally, because of this common faith and common need, understanding the community, they more easily can be brought into coalitions and become your allies for any work that you are doing. So I challenge you to keep that in mind on your projects, whatever you are working on. So even if you're doing social housing, engage the faith community in that. I'm taking that model back to our CLT on the social housing, things that we have learned here. And with that, then, that kind of gives a reason for why the faith community has been allies with these people in the Inland Empire and with us in the San Gabriel Valley, and I'm sure with a lot of you. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions? We have 5 minutes for questions.
We have like four or 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you very much. That was a fascinating presentation, all three of you. What I'm most interested in as a member of the board of AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and you may know that we're in the business of building, converting structures to affordable housing. And what I'm very curious about is the costs per unit in each of these settings. What effect is it? Because I'm not sure anyone mentioned that.
So
Thank you.
yeah, it's about between 250 to 260 for the units that we're putting in.
includes the land cost as well?
Yes, that's the total build-out cost. And so the actual modular unit is about 100 and, well, it depends on what you get in there as far as finished products, but ours are about $160,000. And we have things in there like tankless water heaters. So we're doing a lot of energy saving stuff, and so we don't have any gas going in, and so a lot of it is swapped out. You could get a unit the same size for about 140, but it's it's a you got to build the pad, you got to build the rough plumbing, you got to get the utilities to it. So our build out cost is a lot closer to 260 grand, between 250 and 260, depending on how it all comes in.
Thank you. And the others?
We haven't started building yet on our,
So there's no budget?
not yet. We are just in the process of forming for our first piece, so.
The others?
Well, we're the same nonprofit. We're both Inland Equity
Yeah.
Community Land Trust, yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. So there's a lot of, these organizations mentioned that they're fairly new. That's because in California, in the last 5 years, there's been close to 40 community land trusts that are forming, and it is growing massively. And I encourage a lot of organizations to seek the technical assistance and the support of the California CLT network. Maribel is on the board. I used to be on the board as well. I'm on the C4 action, right? So we do policy. And one of the things I want to mention is I encourage you to look at the Chapter 8 pilot program here in LA County from Councilwoman Hilda Solis, which we used $15.6 million of public money to acquire 5 buildings in the county of here in the county of Los Angeles. One of them is not too far from here. It's literally about a mile away. And one of the models is we are working on the acquisition, on the rehab, and the property management of it. And they're doing a market rate kind of model, and there's equity, there's limit equity models too, there's the rental models. So there's a lot of different models that are out there. I encourage you to look at the website. There's also going to be a conference here in Los Angeles in October of this year. Maribel, right? October, you're on the planning committee. And so I encourage you to attend the conference. You'll get more information. Look at the website. We'll be there as well. It will be a statewide conference on community land trusts. Thank you.
And I did want to mention that LA County has done a lot of great work. In San Bernardino County and in Riverside County, we don't even come close with the Board of Supervisors level. So a lot of it has been state level or like the broker loan that I shared with you in the beginning. So there's a lot more work that we need to do at the county systems level. In the city of Hoopa Valley, that might be something we might end up doing. But other than that, we haven't had a lot of support other than that. Thanks.
But the California Community Land Network is a great umbrella organization that really provides so many tools and things for us, and webinars, and very, very good organization. Yeah.
Thank you for a great presentation. I was wondering, where did the initial investment, the initial capital investment, as you guys are already off and running, where does that come from?
Do you want to speak to that,
You
Maribel?
could.
So we do a lot of grant writing, and that funds a lot of our operations. And then, like Maribel mentioned early in her presentation about building the relationships, we have sort of a grassroots base doing the tenants union work and things like that. We built relationships with electeds. We have the ability, basically, we got $1 million grant from the California Department of Housing and Community Development because we were able to build relationships with various, form coalitions within politicos in the high desert. And so That
They have a
work-
good relationship with the assembly member, Juan Carillo. And
Mm-hmm.
so then every assembly member has like a budget for, I don't know, pet projects or whatever you want to call it. So we put a proposal together, and it's through that, and so he added it to our list. They talked to the Inland Empire Caucus, and then it goes through the budget committees and all this other stuff, right? And so then that's how we did it. But like I was sharing, that we have also a 501c4 where we do get out the vote, and that also helps too. So that's why I encourage anyone that does housing to also be part or lead or start a C4 as well.
And so that was part of it, and then the rest there's an organization that we work with called Lend Donate, and they do nonprofit lending. And so if you're looking, you got a project you can pitch to them, they find angel investors, and they try and bid each other down on the interest rate, and they make donations. And so it's an excellent organization also, and that's how we got, because the project is more than $1 million. And so that gap funding that Maribel mentioned, we got as a loan, and once we build the house, we can pay off that loan. And so
I was going to also add too, we have a long-term vision. So we have a long-term vision, which is on the north side of the 20 acres, we want to build worker cooperatives and consumer cooperatives. There's a high school right near there, and it's kind of very rural, unincorporated, and it's a community wealth project. It's not just housing, it's jobs, it's access to opportunity, education. So we actually can build a solidarity economy, as a phrase is often used, that's not just a housing vision, but a community wealth vision.
We've just gotten small grants for kind of administrative, and one house that has been donated. The owners still live in it, so it's another model of, they live in it in perpetuity, but they have no heirs, so it's going to go to somebody else afterwards, but it stays within the land trust. And that's a model that's also in existence in Berkeley as well, many different places where people can do that. In Marin County, I think there is also some of that. So.
What is the difference between a 501c3 and a 501c4? You keep mentioning 501c4.
Maribel.
Sorry. 501c3, sorry about that with these acronyms here. 501c3 is a nonprofit that you could only do, you can't do candidate work, right? You can do services. I think there's like a 25% where you can do grassroots lobbying. So you could also do, do some policy advocacy, right? But then there's also a 501c4, which is another kind of nonprofit. And there you have to have 51% or more doing issues and, engaging with the community, grassroots lobbying, and then another 49%. You got to have a below 49% threshold of candidate work, other political work. So it's another nonprofit, and there you could do a lot more than this.
I'll add this, the Sierra Institute, the Sierra Ecological Institute, has a 501c3 and a 501c4, because you need to hold politicians accountable while you're doing grassroots-based work.
Thank you very much for an
Thank you.
interesting
Thank you.